Hey Eric, it's good to be with you today. I'm Gary, this is Eric Barber, who was 10 years CrossFit trainer in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
CrossFit gym owner.
CrossFit gym owner, okay, yeah. So you've done a lot, you trained a lot of, how many people did you say you've trained over the years?
So I usually, safely I'd say over 2,000.
No
it's
way.
actually closer to 3,000, but that number freaks me out.
Wow.
But when I say over 2,000, I know that that's true.
Okay,
You know,
well, you're a gym owner, I'm a former pastor, so when I hear the number 3,000, that sounds like a mega church, you know, you got like a mega gym, and that's awesome over the years.
That's coaching people, you
Yeah.
know, like getting in there and getting to know the people and working with them every day, a lot of times.
Wow.
Or every other
That's so
day,
cool.
you know. Yeah.
You also competed in CrossFit
Yep.
competitions?
Yep, I've done some CrossFit events.
What's that like? Is that pretty...
Yeah,
pretty
back in the
pretty much
early
killer?
days, in the early days of CrossFit, there were no classes, there were no age groups or anything like
no.
that.
Wow.
So I was thrown in there with the young guys. You know, I'm almost 50 years old. I'll be 50 in a year. And back then, I must have been 38 or 39 or something in the earlier days. And so I was thrown in there with all the young guys and didn't do as well during those competitions, obviously. But once they started having age classes, I entered the Masters like 40 to 49 years old, and those I did really well on.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
And you also did some Olympic weightlifting,
Yeah,
right?
I did two events. One was just one that a gym had put on, and it was more for fun.
Yeah.
And it was just, again, in the early days of CrossFit, this CrossFit gym in another city put on an Olympic weightlifting competition.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm not an Olympic weightlifter, but CrossFit has taught me how to do the Olympic lifts. So yeah, I jumped in there, and I think he had weight classes and age classes, and I did well on that. I think I won second place or something
Awesome.
like that. And then about a year later, the Oklahoma Olympic weightlifting championships were on. I said, hey, what the heck, I'll go see what happens. And I ended up winning that.
That's
But that
huge,
was for my age group and my weight
Yeah.
category, and there wasn't a lot of competition. But even still, it was just
Still, I mean, like a lot
cool,
of those
yeah.
Oklahoma boys grew up on the farm, and they're lifting bales of hay all day long. So you got some pretty stiff competition there, I'm sure. So, and Eric, I would say to those who are listening, you are, you're almost 50. I'm 60. So, but you are the fittest man I've ever met. I mean,
Really?
Yeah, I've heard of Rich Froning. They say he's the
Yeah.
fittest man
Oh my gosh, yeah.
ever. But I think I don't know him personally, but you
Right.
definitely. So I like that you're not just telling people what to do, but you're living it yourself. You know,
Yeah.
you get in here and you're obviously working out and stuff. So
Yep, I've been in this game for a long time. I owned and ran my own CrossFit gym in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then 20 years before that, I was a personal trainer.
okay.
Either working in big, we call them Globo gyms, or working. I had a small personal training business
Okay.
right before I started the CrossFit gym. So I've been a coach forever. Even when I've tried to get away from it, like I worked with kids for a while. I worked on in psychiatric units, working with at-risk teenagers.
Yeah.
Even then, I put them all on workout programs. I couldn't get away from it.
That's cool.
You know. Yeah.
And
so
that I bet that made a big impact on their lives.
I hope so. I hope so. I know that it brought a lot of the violence on the unit down.
Wow.
Because when I would get hired on at these places, I'd walk in and they would say, now you really got to be careful, you know, because it's such a dangerous, you know, we have a lot of riots here. And I'm like, what? I'm like, with these teenagers? And they're like, oh yeah. And I just started putting everybody on little workout programs. Every night before bedtime, I would take everybody through circuits of push-ups and sit-ups and all this and that. And they were so sore the next day they couldn't move, and just the
so
violence
cool.
on the units just went down. And it just, God's just always blessed me to be able to walk in and to pretty much anywhere and work people out.
Yeah.
You know, I've tried to do other different things in my life, and even waited tables for a while, and still put it on half of the wait staff on workout programs. You know, so once a coach, always a coach. Once a pastor, always a pastor.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. How old were you when you started working out? Is that something to even?
Wow. Well, if we go way back, I was probably 10 years old. My father, I grew up in Canada. I was born in Rochester, New York. But I think when I was 3 years old, we moved to Ontario, Canada. And my dad was working with at-risk youth up in Canada back in the 70s. And I remember he had an office about a mile away from our house. And one night in the middle of the night, not in the middle of the night, late at night, he said, "Hey, Eric, I want to bring some dumbbells over from the office over to our house. And why don't you go with me?" And, you know, any chance to hang out with my dad back then, I was like, yeah, I don't know what a dumbbell is. But let's do it, you know? So we got to his office, and he had a pair of I'll never forget this, he had a pair of 5-pound dumbbells and a pair of 10-pound dumbbells. And he said, "I'll carry the 10s and you carry the 5s. And I remember picking those things up, and there was an immediate connection. It was the weirdest thing.
Wow. Yeah.
But wrapped my hands around those cold metal dumbbells, and we had to walk a mile. And I'm carrying these 5s, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, because it's a mile for a little kid, right? And my dad was just like, "You're doing great, son." And I just couldn't believe how strong he was to be able to hold those 10-pound dumbbells and walk the mile and not even be fazed by it. And that was probably my first introduction to that. And it's funny how I've talked to other people, athletes and weightlifters and bodybuilders, and they all seem to remember that first time. So I'd say by the time I grew very tall, very fast. I was probably 6'1", and weighed about 150. Okay. So I was just a stick, just a beanpole. And 15 years old, I was getting picked on a lot, and so I started taking those 10-pound dumbbells and just sitting there in my room and learning how to do bicep curls and shoulder presses and stuff like that, and watching my little muscles grow. And then the first time I ever walked in a gym, it was a little hole in the wall. It was I think it was a high school gym, and it was later at night, and it was filled with a bunch of, in my mind, barbarians. I mean, these guys, you know, they were the older teenagers. They were like 16, 17, 18-year-old guys, and they were just looked huge to me. And I just, you know, my skinny self walked in there. I was like, whoa, you know, and these guys are clanging iron, and I just was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I love it.
Wow.
And that was probably my first exposure to a gym. A little light bulb, you know, a little tiny weight room back in the late 70s, early 80s.
My goodness.
And
So you grew up in Canada. Tell me a little bit about
I did.
Just your background besides your
so I think we lived there 12 years, I think.
Okay.
I think we moved there when I was 3, and my dad worked with kids all those years. And growing up in Canada was pretty awesome, man. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I was surrounded by the woods. And every summer, my dad, his position would change from program director of this company to camp director. Every summer, they would take all these kids and all these staff from all these different cities and put them right plunk in the middle of nature. No running water, completely primitive. And every summer we would live there for 2 months. So I spent a good chunk of my life living in either a tent or a teepee. And my dad worked real close with the Ojibwe Indians, the Thunder Bay area. And, really neat. And so my earliest memories are going to real powwows, not the kind that you see
put on
in the cities here. I'm talking like backcountry, real powwows and stuff like that. And just had just the way I was brought up, just a true appreciation of nature and animals and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I love that.
Great upbringing. I was never good in school. I was always thinking of comic books and muscles and, and that kind of thing, or thinking of just nature and outdoors, and school was very hard for me.
Okay. But you were born in the U.S. or in Canada?
Yep, born in Rochester, New York.
Okay, yeah. So that's why you have the American flag and not the Canadian?
That's right.
No Canadian flag here in the gym?
No.
All right. Well, we'll be looking for that maybe in the future. But so, being that your background is obviously in the field we're talking about here, mine's in ministry. So I always ask the ministry question, but tell me a little bit about your, would you say you were raised in a faith-based home, or is that something that came later to you? Or?
No, not at all. My dad, there's still confusion as to what his heritage is. You know, he grew up with different fathers and the whole bit, and he believes it can be traced back to Native American on his father's side. Okay. And half Native American, I think, on his mother's side. But none of that can be proven, so I don't really know. He doesn't still know to this day, but he was brought up in that culture. And my mother was pure Catholic, So religion never got talked about. I remember early memories of my father going out and praying to the four directions.
Wow.
Native American, just
right.
And my mom, Catholic, so they never really talked much about that. And but we still had a very loving home, very cool upbringing. When I was 14, 15, we moved to South Florida. And what had happened was the government was starting to take over, working with at-risk youth. My dad, he was a 70s guy. And things were a lot different back then. And then when the government started taking over and wanting to put all the kids on meds and stuff, my dad was like, I'm out. Just miserable. Could not stand how it was starting to happen like that. So he had a friend saying, hey, just come move to Florida, man. We'll get you a job and we'll hook you up. And So we moved from Canada to Florida in the middle of my high school years. And it was brutal.
Yeah.
It was hard for me. I did, not just moving, to a different school, but moving to a different country.
Yeah.
Left all of my friends that I grew up with and was thrown into a situation where it was all surfers and cheerleaders and, gangs were in the schools and police dogs would walk through the school. And I was just like, what is going on? I was still real skinny back then. Got picked on a lot because of my thick Canadian accent.
Okay.
Just hated school, hated the whole floor. It was so humid. I was used to, it was just part of my thing to be able to climb a mountain, sit up on top of it and chill for hours. That's just when you're in Canada, man, you can do stuff like that. And, then I moved to South Florida and it's just all flat. And, there's skyscrapers and things like that. And I remember almost out of a panic one night, I climbed a hospital.
Oh,
like
wow.
I climbed up
That's
the side
amazing.
of a hospital.
Not
just to
the
get up
stairs.
high.
Not on the stairs.
No, on the outside of the
Spider-Man
building.
type thing.
Yeah, it was a weird thing where you could reach your hand all the way through. Huge handholds, huge. And I climbed to the top of that thing just to get up above everything and breathe. That's a true story, man. I still can't believe I did that. But when you're a teenager, man, you don't really make the
crazy stuff.
best decisions. So, but that was the little guy, the nature guy inside of me, just trying to find something that I could,
Right.
So over the 4 years, I think that we lived there, 4 years, the only nature that I could really connect to was the ocean. And that just slowly started becoming my new thing.
Right.
During those 4 years, like I said, I got picked on a lot, so I got into martial arts, got into Shotokan karate, and then I was a wrestler. I tried playing football, broke my collarbone, and then I always grew up naturally athletic, but not in formal sports. When I moved to Florida, there was all these formal sports everywhere, and so I just started jumping into them, and wrestling seemed to be my number one. My number one thing, and I really enjoyed the hardness of the workouts. I had a great coach. He was awesome and pushed me to a level that I didn't know was humanly possible. And just again fueling that desire to be an athlete. And
well, that's where you got your coaching your way you train us is you do push us. That's which
I would say
love
that my dad gave me a lot in the sense of strength, more of a stoic strength. And the Coach Dawkins from my early Florida years, he instilled an absolute toughness that I didn't know was humanly possible,
It was very fortunate because there's so many young men growing up today without any kind of father figure or somebody telling them about what it's like to be a man, to be masculine. It's almost like training men to be effeminate now is in vogue and rather. So I'm glad you had that. And
just to
I'm
put
glad
a
you've done
cap
it.
on that story though, real quick, that was my long answer. So the faith thing came in Florida. My father had a radical transformation. He became a born-again, spirit-filled Christian and said, hey, everybody, we're going to start going to church now. and he chose an Assemblies of God church. And we were just like, what is going on? Again, Florida, those years for me was extremely hard.
Yeah.
And so we all became a Christian family. And I remember accepting Jesus in my heart in a youth group, more because of the preaching. It was more because I didn't want to go to hell. There was no real relationship with Jesus. It was a 100% fear-based. They scared the hell out of me. And so I did not want anything to do with hell, you know. And so out of fear, I accepted Jesus in my heart. And my dad kind of went off the deep end during those years, and I completely broke away from him. I just mentally, I just didn't do well with that time in my life. And so thankfully, I had the athletics to just keep, because I probably would have turned very destructive had I not, you know. And so by the time I was 18 years old, 19 years old, I just moved out. I just checked out. I was like, I've had it.
You left home, or were you still at home?
Oh yeah, left home. So Charlotte, North Carolina, and I got a job at a gym.
Okay.
You know, you graduate from high school, what do I do now? So I got a job at a gym, and the owner of the gym, this would have been late 80s, before formal personal training really was popular. It was in the early years of that. He pulled me aside and he said, hey, listen, a lot of us in my field, we're starting to talk about generating more income other than just gym memberships. I want to start taking care of the people on the floor, teaching them how to work out. It's called personal training. Would you like me to have you take on that responsibility? And I was just the kid working at a gym, cleaning equipment, shaking hands, and encouraging people. But he said, I will pay you if you learn from me. I'll pay you how to personal train people. And that was really the early beginnings of that. And so I became a personal trainer back in 1989, I think it was.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. At that time, you'd kind of rejected your faith altogether, and
yes.
And what happened
So
after
when
that?
I moved out at 19 years old, I think that would have been 1989. 19 years old, I literally became a hellion. And in my mind, I thought, clearly, I'm not going to make it to heaven because I'm just so bad. You know, everything that church had taught me. I felt like, man, I can't. I keep messing up everywhere I go. I just can't live up to this standard. You know, don't drink, don't smoke, don't have sex, don't do this, don't do that, don't cuss, don't. Everything was no. And I don't think you can base a relationship off the bat like that at all. So I just checked out. And I became, in my early personal training years, I was young, and I just had a rebellious attitude, but then it turned into the drinking, and then it turned into recreational drugs. And the nightclub thing, and just the dangerous lifestyle of living that way. Always going to nightclubs, always hooking up with people, and it was just a very dark time of my life. And I had a blast. I enjoyed it. You know, I look back on it now, and I wish I had not done a lot of that stuff. Yeah,
I hear that a lot. People have regrets, but
I love those years those years where I was a pure adventurer. You know, everything was an adventure. But I don't like the sins that I did and some of the choices that I made during those times. And when I was 25 years old, still, you know, coaching people and being a personal trainer and all this kind of thing, but living this other lifestyle over here. But then I was very serious about my workouts and very serious about keeping that going and being a good personal trainer. But I just lived like a crazy man.
That's wild.
But when I was 25 years old, I had a pretty radical experience with just me and God. And I was filthy. I was very angry and very dark at that time. And the way he reached out to me was so incredibly personal and loving and forgiving that I just was like, I'm all yours. It was that radical. But that's another whole story.
Wow, no, that's powerful.
Yeah, it was night and day. It was a conversation in a car by myself. He stepped in and flooded the car with love. And to this day, I've never come even close. Even being a parent, I've never come as close to, and I love my kids, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I am like big time in love with my kids. But even still, it was a different kind of love that I've never experienced
Wow.
since that day.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's so
it was
good.
powerful.
Yeah, to hear somebody that before that your mind was on hell or avoiding it or maybe not doing enough to earn your way into
It was
heaven.
for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And God chased me.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like I wasn't chasing him. He chased me.
Wow.
And I was like, man, you can have me if you want me, but I'm nothing now, you know? And he said, absolutely, I want you. And so after that, you know, most of my athleticism before that was fueled from fire. It was fueled from passion and anger towards my dad and towards religion and Christianity and all that, just constantly angry. And that was my fuel. And I didn't want to give that up. I didn't want to give, that was my source of strength and power.
Yeah.
So when I had this experience with God in my car at 25 years old, 1995, I remember not long after that, maybe a month or two, I said, hey, Lord, I'm even willing to give up all of my working out because I see the bad things that I've pulled from. And God said, no, I don't want you to give it up. I'm the one that originally gave that to you.
Yeah.
But you branched off and tried to pull from other areas to do it on your own.
It's good.
And so he let me have it.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Isn't that cool?
It is very cool.
And so
That's-
as a result, I've been able to help many, many, many other people get healthy and fit.
I love that. Do you feel like there's a connection between your faith and your fitness life? Do the two intersect at all, or is it sort of totally decompartmentalized?
I don't want to say that what I do is a ministry,
Right.
but I know that ministry happens.
Okay.
Okay, so case in point, I've got a guy here at the gym that is really struggling with some stuff. Okay, some heavy stuff. And when I met him, and when he first started training with us, he was a mess. And it took everything he could get just to get to the gym, you know? Like that was a big deal for him. But now, this guy, because he started making some good choices and some habits, I said, if we can just focus on, forget about the workouts, those will take care of themselves. But if you can just get in the habit of 3 times a week, just that one thing, if you can just focus on that, just get here.
Yeah.
I'll do the rest.
Yeah.
I'll make you laugh. I'll give you hard workouts. I'll yell and scream at you. I'll cheer you on. Don't worry about all that. You don't even have to lift the heavy stuff. You can just go light. Just show up. You could even show up and not work out. I don't care. Just I want to see you 3 times a week. And that one thing he could do.
Yeah.
It took him a little while, but that's what he could do. And what's ended up happening is he has befriended some of our pastors here that work out here. They've spoken into his life. One of the pastors gave him an autobiography book, hand signed to him.
That's cool.
And now this guy is starting to come alive.
Yeah.
And he's putting muscle on, and he's saying no to a lot of the things that he had coming in here.
Yeah.
And so ministry happens. It happens in other ways too. A lot of times, if I do my job and if I stay close to God, and I'm listening and I'm trying to, you know what I mean? I'm paying attention.
Totally. Yeah.
And I look at this as serious. A lot of times I'll say the right thing to a person that I don't even know is what they needed to hear at that time, which I'm sure you can understand.
Right.
Same thing with you.
Yeah.
If you are staying close to God and doing what you need to do, and then when you're talking to somebody, you see them light up, and you don't even know what you said, and then later on they can say, "You're not going to believe this, but when you told me this, it was like God speaking right through you."
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff happens. Am I trying to do that? No.
Right. No,
My
it's the most
job is to
natural way.
get people lean, healthy, strong, and fit.
Yeah.
My job is not to turn this into a religious
Yeah.
experience at all. But does it happen here? Absolutely. I say it all the time. I keep a lot of that stuff to myself. That's not for me to.
Sure.
That's his deal. So, yeah.
Yeah. No,
Does that answer your
yeah, it
question?
does. Yeah. No, I think the connection that I'm thinking about, though, has more to do with the, I guess I call it the spirit and body connection. How, like, I'll just give you my short story here since coming here,
Sure.
now maybe getting close to 3 months now. So for me, I'd like to wake up in the morning and have what we call a devotional life. So I open my Bible, have a little quiet time with the Lord. But I found myself, like 20, 30 pounds overweight, eating really bad, never working out. So I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be tired right away. I'd already be tired before the day started, let alone in mid-afternoon when I really got exhausted. And so I found out that as I started working out, like my mornings were more fresh, my mind was more alert. I just felt better about myself as a human being. So I think that's what I'm thinking about, the connection between faith and not that I don't feel like super spiritual when I'm doing curls, but doing curls later on in the day if I go for a walk, my mind is fresher, I'm more alert, I have more energy. So therefore, I'm able to give myself to my craft of whether it be preaching or whatever better. So I'm real thankful for that, and I really advocate for that as well. That people of faith don't compartmentalize to such a degree that like 1 Thessalonians 5:23 says we're made to be whole, fully, spirit, soul, and body. And many believers sort of just take the spirit part, like, oh, my spirit, maybe my soul will get a little soul care, but body, like that's not important. And God says no, spirit, soul, and body, and all three elements are put together. So when you help somebody, I think in their body, you're helping somebody in their mind, you're helping somebody.
See, that's how I live my life.
Yeah.
So when I hear stuff like that, it's almost like I need to remind myself, because I don't know what it's like to not be in shape.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My whole life.
It's not fun, I can tell you.
My whole life has been about staying in shape.
Wow.
And, you work hard when you're young to get up to a certain level, and then you ask yourself questions, is this where I want to be?
Yeah.
Is this good enough? And then it becomes maintenance. Well, to me, I'm always still trying to go up.
So you don't go to maintenance.
It keeps me engaged.
Yeah,
it keeps me involved. If I get an injury, it might set me back a little bit, but the mentality is I'm going to be working out the rest of my life. I actually don't understand people that don't have that component of their life. It's such a small price to pay.
Right.
If you think about it, there's 168 hours in a week, right?
Right.
And all you need is a good 3 hours a week to work out. And so I don't judge people. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a lot of people, they'll see me in the grocery store, and maybe they trained with me in the past, and maybe they put back on 10 pounds or 20 pounds, or maybe their grocery cart has a bunch of crap in it, and they're like trying to hide it from me,
Yeah.
So, to me, I don't get that, and they always say, now don't judge me, and they give you the excuses for what's in their cart, or they say, I know you're thinking I'm fat right now, and I'm just going, man, that's not I don't think that way. When I look at a person, let's say they're 50 pounds overweight or 100 pounds overweight, in my mind, I'm thinking of what they look like without all that on there. Yeah. How can I help them? I'm not sitting there judging them going, boy, you've really let yourself go, or you're really fat.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think like that, I always think, I'm kind of weird. Everything goes back to, my superhero days, right? I still think like that. I always look at people and I think of what the Spartan version of them would look like. Not the bodybuilder version or I always think of people, how they look, leaned out and muscular. That's how I think everybody should be.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to be, that's fine. I don't judge people, you know what I mean? That's not where I'm coming from, but especially in the church, people who pray all the time, they've got their spiritual down, maybe they've been going through counseling and working on their emotional or their mental, to completely ignore the physical, does not compute with me. It's spirit, soul, and body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's such a small price to pay to be able to take care of your body.
Good point.
Now, I say that's just the exercise portion. Of course, there's the other 23 hours of the day.
Yeah.
It's what people are putting in their mouths.
Yeah.
And you can't just pray away.
Right.
You can't pray away poor nutrition and lazy lifestyle.
I'm coming from like we were talking earlier, coming from a pastoral background. There was Duke University did a study, and they said 80% of pastors are either obese or overweight. 80%. In the U.S., I know the
That's
numbers
what
are
I see.
pretty
Yeah,
high too. And
absolutely.
because we tend to spend all our time in the office and, like I said, counseling people and in the pulpit and studying for preparing and things like that. So, or, driving to the hospital to visit people. The most walking you get is like from your car to the hospital. So it's
I have
it's
a big problem with that.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to learn from or glean from a pastor who is living a lifestyle that is completely, in my mind, it's hard for me to. I like listening to the pastors that work out.
Yeah.
Pastor Paul, Victory Church
Yeah.
in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That guy works out. He's great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can just tell.
Yeah.
He's got a balance going on. If you, the guy from Life Church, Craig Rochelle,
yeah, Stephen
guys
Furtick,
working, Stephen Furtick.
Yeah, these guys look like
I like these guys. Now, I'm not saying you got.
they might be taking steroids. I'm not sure. No, I'm joking.
No, those guys are, and you don't even have to work out that much.
Yeah.
But it's a language that I understand. When you go through forced hardship on purpose, like in a gym, in a workout, you're going to develop skills and you're going to learn things through the hardship that definitely apply to real life. Period. Okay. I can't tell you how many times there's carryover, right?
That's right.
So when you've got somebody that, you've got sorry to blow your podcast on, but if you've got a 300-pound pastor up there,
right,
sweating, wheezing, and I can think of a handful right off the bat, I just can't. I can't glean from. I can't hear what they're saying when they're telling me how I need to be living as a Christian. It's hard for me, man.
It's hard. Yeah.
That's not judging them. It's just like, man. And it's not that they don't deserve to be on the platform. If God called them to be on the platform, that's great. But if they're completely ignoring the physical, how can they be in a position to be telling me how to discipline?
Right. Isn't it the same thing? Like if we're talking about spirit, soul, and body, if a pastor looks at somebody and say and that guy's like, he must be at the gym 4 hours a day. He's totally in shape, but he has no spiritual life, and they'd look at that and say, like, man, that guy really needs a spiritual life. Well, the opposite's true as well. I think as a pastor or a Christian leader or a missionary or whatever, people that do that. And so, I know I'm a pastor here. You have a couple other guys here that are pastors, and we kind of get together and comment on how effective it's been for us.
The Gary Wilkerson Podcast is brought to you by World Challenge, transforming lives through the message and mission of Jesus Christ. Each week, this podcast reaches thousands of listeners. This critical work is made possible by the generous contributions of individuals like you who believe in World Challenge's mission. Thank you for listening and supporting.